Perfect. So I was listening to the talk that Carl and Jonathan gave at the summer retreat, I think. That was also on YouTube, and I was first thinking about an own account, but then I decided to make a kind of a not the same from my perspective, but more a talk about the Bhumi openings, how I perceive them, and the perfectionings, and basically the how my kind of insight in how the shape and the let's say the process of opening and perfecting the Bhumis, how that has been for me. I'm talking about my perspective. I understand that this is quite subjective, and not everybody experiences it in the same way, but I think it can be something interesting to share. So I had my first two Bhumi openings, my initial awakening, and the second one I was awake, and there was a really clear shift in clarity, and like something, it has always felt like my eyesight has moved kind of like a bit further up with each opening, so that was something I noticed there. And all other openings and perfections have happened to me during sleep. Not that I haven't been aware of them. I've been aware because there has been quite a strong sensation, like energy running up through the body and reaching even further up and further up and further up. But at some point I realized that as we talk about visiting Bhumis, you can go through the open ones, and when you hit the next one that's not open, it kind of feels blocked, like where you're going through is or the opened Bhumi is has felt like or let's say unopened Bhumi has felt like the chakra in the middle of the Bhumi plate is concealed in some kind of solid, unpenetrable material, and kind of like a lollipop. You know, you have the lollipop, and you have this kind of wrapping around it, and you know that it's in there, but you can't access it. That it's something that's covering it, and so that's how an unopened Bhumi felt, and it was somewhere around the fifth Bhumi maybe that I realized that there's kind of like this energetic sensation to it, that there's a difference, that you can go through upwards and then you kind of hit the wall. And then when I kind of analyzed how this wall looked, it was like this concealed ball. And when I looked at it even closer, it had like a lollipop, this hollow kind of stick or channel that goes through all the way up to the top, and it had like the channel would be the hollow part, and it had this kind of like the same kind of material around it that was covering also the Bhumi. And as you would progress, I mean, let's say for instance that I was on the fourth and working on opening the fifth, you could kind of sense how the wrapping around would wear thinner and thinner from the top onwards. So kind of by grace from higher up, from the highest Bhumis coming down and wearing it thinner and thinner until it would kind of there would be a small opening, not a Bhumi opening, but the shell would kind of open at the top, and then it would start to wear down from the sides. And also the central channel would kind of start to the covering it would also start to narrow down, so that eventually all the sides of covering the bhumi, the chakra in the middle of the bhumi, if we're technically speaking correctly, would be really, really thin, just like paper thin. And once all these had worn off, then in this case the fifth one would open. So it was quite easy to know for me, was I just like really far away from opening, or was it something that was, let's say, in a near future, something that would happen. And when the opening would happen, then kind of it felt again that my awareness and eyesight shifted even further up. And also that the energy rushed up again, and then kind of sight widened even further and even further. And so this has been quite an interesting way, because as we talk about visiting bhumis, it's you kind of tune into them, even if you haven't opened, or the let's say higher ones, you can still tune into them, but you can't go through them, like pierce through them. Just in my experience, I wasn't able to I was kind of able to look at them from the outside, but I wasn't able to like really go in through them. And I have to say that we were talking about a stack of plates, like bhumi plates. It was only for me on the when I was on the 12th bhumi, and I was working on opening my 13th, that I realized that I had actually, my awareness had been moving in this kind of block, and I was now sensing that there was an actual, like the 13th bhumi was the first bhumi where I realized that there was actually this plate that and the chakra in the middle was only a part, because earlier or previously I had only been able to feel the chakra in the middle and not the plate that surrounded it. So the 13th one was the first where I sensed that, okay, that this I hadn't been aware of, that I was moving in this kind of block of plates upwards with my awareness. Yeah.
How long did it take for you to get from 1st to 13th? What kind of time span are we talking about between the first openings and being able to perceive this plate?
It took me about 3.5 years, I'd say, coming from the first to the 13th. Yeah. So, about 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And and when I sensed the 13th bhumi plate, and with the chakra in the middle, it was quite. Then I understood Kim's talk about the bhumi plates, because I hadn't been able to really feel them, and I have to say that it kind of was assuring to not have to just take somebody's word, but only to feel it myself as well. And after that, when the 13th opened, I was able to feel that the ones that I had opened previously, like let's say if the just for an example, that the stack of plates is this big. I'm not quite sure. I just sense, but I can't put real exact dimensions on them. So there are the width of the stack is like this. So you can kind of feel how wide the opening is in the middle. So how much dark material that you can't go through with your awareness on the side. So after the 13th open, it was kind of like a pyramid, like this, going up to the 13th bhumi, where the open spot was quite narrow at the top, and it was much wider at the base. And then when the first bhumi perfected, did I say that the opening was always kind of like a star that started to shine? I might have not said it, but yeah. And now with the perfectioning, it was like the star burst even more, or became even more shining, and the borders of the Bhumi plate kind of disappeared, and the chakra was just shining in all directions, and there were no kind of the first plate disappeared from the sides, and the second one was basically the same. And now I'm not quite sure where I am at the moment, but I think it's much more difficult to sense, for me at least, going up in the plates, because I don't have. I'm not sure. I've done these Pure Land meditations, like Pure Land jhanas, where we tune into different gurus, presence who are corresponding in their vibrations according with the Bhumis, and if you get a lot of energetic feelings, you know that there's still a lot of karmic residues, and the less you get, the further you are along with the perfectioning. And I've been having a hard time, so I guess it's a good sign. And trying to find these different sensations. Yeah, I have to say that if I'm talking about how it feels to progress, I would say that you know, when your mind is empty, then you can also have your body feeling empty, and that's quite. It's a really big difference, because I've since I've been young, I've been able to kind of access this empty place. It hasn't been there non-stop on, but I kind of knew that there was somewhere where my mind felt empty. But to have your body feel empty and alive is something that's been embodying, or has been embodied now with the perfectionings, and also with opening the Mahasiddha Bhumis. So yeah, I think it's a really motivating in a way to have kind of realized that what you've read, and that when you practice you can actually achieve what you're reading about. I also remember some years ago there was we had the Song of the Vajra text, and I really didn't understand the content of it, but now with more insight it kind of makes sense. And that I feel is really motivating, to know that you can kind of, even if there's something that you've at first thought that was really difficult, you kind of start to get a hang of, and okay, now I know. Yeah. Sure, Kim.
Something that people often wonder about open heart is that there's quite a bit of technical stuff.
Yeah.
Technical things, just like in your presentation now.
Yeah.
But how would you say that, why did you start to practice in the first place, and you had some kind of a wish or motivation to start practice, and how has it worked? Like, how is your daily life different now than it was before?
Okay, a lot of. So I have to kind of. Yeah, I might ask. What did you ask? Let me start by answering. First, what got me practicing? I've actually always been searching for something. I never knew exactly what I was searching for, but there was this constant trying different sports, arts. I mean, just basically trying to find that something that would really inspire. And I started loads of things, and I dropped just as many things that I started, except for this. So this is actually the first thing that has really stuck. And I remember my first retreat, weekend retreat or city retreat in Helsinki. We did some guru yoga, and I remember sending an email that this actually felt like coming home. Like, just, I mean, if you've been away, and then you come home, and then you just sit on the sofa like, oh my God, it's so nice to be back home. I don't have to do anything. just like this really familiar recognition. And so that was something that felt quite, I mean, I'd never experienced something like that before. My first year I was really struggling after awakening, so I didn't progress in that sense too much, but there was still something I wasn't properly like practicing either, which then kind of resulted in that I was feeling really murky and really heavy, and everything felt quite difficult. But then when the second opened, I thought that, okay, I mean, I must still be doing something right, even if I wasn't putting in that much effort in the beginning. So, but there was still some kind of effect of it. And after that, it kind of, how do you say, when you have this self-feeding circle, that you kind of, when you put in the effort, you get the benefit of having more clarity and more presence and much less selfing, and you're being able to, or you can be able, or you are able to be much more present when you're talking with other people, and you're not sucking in so much of other people's energy and emotions, and you kind of, well, that came actually probably more somewhere around the 7th Bhumi, and even more with the Mahasiddha, the 11th, 12th, and 13th Bhumis, that you were able to like keep this intact space around you without effort, so that not everything is just like coming through. It's not seeping through. Of course it is, but I'm not perfect. But still, it's much less than before. So that's something that has been quite. I've been happy with it, because it's been quite heavy to carry on, or carry all the other stuff from everybody else. And you asked me about technical stuff. I don't have a background in meditation in any way, so in that sense, this was all quite new to me. I mean, might talk in quite technical terms, but the content is actually quite simple. You have kind of these insights, and with each insight you get more clarity, and your sight widens up, and you get more calm. You get you get less and less energetic sensations, and I've sometimes if you have like your normal okay mood is here, and then you have good days, and then you have bad days, so it kind of narrows down it to this. Sure, you have good days and you have bad days, but it kind of takes away off the peaks and the valleys, and narrows it down to this kind of pleasant being. And yeah, did I answer all your questions, or did you have?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think Jonathan had something you wanted to ask.
Yeah, just a small question. What happened? What were your Bhumi perfections? How did they feel, in comparison to Bhumi openings?
How the opening feels different, or perfectioning different to the opening. Well, at least that a big thing is that when you think about the Bhumi, the plates, you kind of or for me I've opened like in a sequence from 1 to 13, and then started from 1 to and going upwards. So kind of the process started again. You kind of return to the first one. There was, but then again, a similarity would have been the expansion of awareness, but it's much, the first one was much more drastic, because that was kind of when you saw through the sense of self. So maybe comparing the first opening and first perfectioning isn't, that could be a bit tricky. But if we talk about the second one, when you've kind of opened the first one and don't have you've kind of seen through that you don't have a sense of self, and the I or a solid me isn't there. I think. Well, wow, that's a good question. I really have to think hard because there are a lot of similarities, kind of like this expanding. But then again, having the whole stack of being able or having a much more solid base makes the feeling completely different also, because you already are kind of already in the awareness. You're only deepening it and embodying it even further. So yeah, really good question. I have to think about it even more.
And for all your Bhumi openings, did it always happen like, did you know when it happened, did you know, oh, there's another one, or did maybe one or two open and you didn't realise, and only later on you realised, oh, I think,
yeah. I have to say that, well, the first one, like the initial awakening, I knew what had happened. The second one, when I was awake, I didn't understand what had happened. It was only a friend of mine who said that, yeah, that was the second one, and Kim confirmed. But after that, the sensation of like energetic movement and the bright star that started to shine was so profound, and the increased level of clarity afterwards, that so kind of it's been I would say it's been a really physical process for me. So in that sense, I don't think I didn't miss any of them except for the second one. Yeah. Does anybody else want to ask something? Do you have other questions? Yeah, Matthew.
Perhaps you could say something about, you said you had a difficult time after the first awakening.
Yeah.
After the first Bhumi opened for about a year.
Yeah.
Could you maybe say something a little bit about that?
Yeah. There was kind of this conflicting, even if I didn't have a self, I was still selfing, kind of. I was kind of going through these patterns, even if I really inside didn't feel like I was actually experiencing it anymore, but kind of like this habit of, if somebody says something to me, I'm just reacting, and then afterwards I was thinking that, okay, this isn't me talking, this isn't what I'm feeling inside, even if it's coming out. And you realize or recognize, yeah. And I still do at times catch myself doing this, but other things that kind of bothered was also I noticed how much selfing other people had in them. So there was a really huge conflict, and that was probably one of the most difficult things, that my surrounding was kind of not in sync with me, and I wasn't able to kind of have my enough own space around myself and me, to which first came much later on, and which I referred to also. So I think that was probably one of the tricky things, and especially when I wasn't practicing too much, then I wasn't kind of working through it either. Another thing that popped into my mind from your question is that also that kind of like the cyclic nature, that you have easier times and then you have rougher times, and for me it has been so that closing in on a Bhumi opening or a shift in the awareness has usually always been preceded by a really rough time. They can vary from a few hours to a few weeks or a month maybe, but that's kind of like, that stuff that rises is the stuff that you have to work through to get kind of further. So and then usually after that it's smooth sailing for some time, and then it starts again, and so Yeah, we're hoping. Well, I think that it will eventually one day stop when the mind is clear. So yeah, but I mean, life is much more easy, and it's kind of. I think I made an analogy one time that it's kind of like having a fishnet with really really small loops, so that you kind of all the fish and everything, seaweed and all the stuff gets caught, and as you progress, kind of the holes or the loops get bigger and bigger, so less stuff gets caught, just the bigger ones, and then you kind of, as you progress, the loops or holes get bigger and bigger until just everything flows through and nothing sticks. So that's kind of how I would say that. Yeah, that's how I describe it. Yeah. Yeah, that's me. I don't.
Still have half an hour to go.
Man.
I can ask you.
Yeah.
You say anything about? I haven't really formulated the question.
Okay.
Formulate. You say anything about sort of how you did you learn anything about how you started to accelerate your Bhumi openings? Was there sort of anything that you realised that you weren't doing before that you started doing which helped?
Yep. Yeah, I have to say, yeah, good question. Something that helped me tremendously is this kind of dedicating the practice selflessly to the benefit of everybody else, and we call it bodhicitta, and yeah, that was something that was really really powerful. I mean, not just to practice for yourself, but that to basically hope that my practice can benefit everybody else. That's something that kind of put me on a new kind of wave to ride. And
did you find that you had to sort of fake it initially? Did you? Because sometimes I do feel like that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel quite tired.
Yeah, I know. Me too. It is at times it's easier, and at times it's really difficult, depending on what kind of day you have. Yeah, but no, I mean at that time it was on a retreat, and we had a ceremony, and we had a relic there, and Kim said that we could make a wish if we wanted, and I was thinking really hard that what can I ask, because I thought that, okay, this is, I shouldn't go too lightly about it. And then I sat there and I was like, oh my God, I don't know. I mean, I don't need anything. I mean, I personally think I'm in a good place, so I don't really need anything. And then I decided that, okay, so, well, as I don't need anything, I can ask for blessing for everybody else and for the Sangha to prosper and for our practice to benefit everybody else. I mean, it came from a really, really pure place. So, yeah, I have to say, in that time it came quite naturally and without any kind of faking. I don't think that it would have affected my progress if I had been faking. Because afterwards I was thinking that, man, how, because I think it was, so if I was on 7, so 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and perfectioning. So 7 Bhumis in a month and a half, 2 months, which was, before that I had been like struggling for 3 years, going from 1 to 6. Or 1 to 7, so yeah, it made a huge difference. Yeah.
And are the perfections happening at the same rate as the openings did, or slower?
It slowed down.
Yeah,
it slowed down. But maybe also my attitude or how I feel about progress probably also has settled down. I'm not that anxious about progress anymore. I know that it will happen. So I put in the effort as I've done before. But I also think that because the first and second Bhumis for me were the toughest one for opening. This is just me thinking out loud, that I think that also those probably are the toughest one to perfect. So they're because the ones that have less karmic residues would probably be easier to open and perfect. I don't know, but this is something that I've been that's something that, as you asked earlier about the similarities or differences, so that's something where I could draw a parallel.
And in terms of visiting the Bhumis, are you actually able to kind of, bring your awareness up and actually feel how wide the hole is for each of the Bhumis, or has that developed a little bit for you?
Yeah, it has. I was actually, when the 13th or 12th opened and the 13th opened, that was when I was able to kind of feel the stack of or pile of plates. It has developed, and I would say that it's quite. I feel it more or less in my awareness and how constricted each feels, and it's actually like measuring. If we're thinking about how far along perfected which Bhumi plate is almost like let's say this is a Bhumi plate that I go up, and then I kind of do like this with my awareness and try to see how far I can push the sides. And if there's stuff only in the corners or something in the middle or somewhere. So it kind of feels like you hit a wall and you can't push through some, and then you kind of sense that, okay, but here I can go a bit further. So yeah, that's how I do it.
And are the plates all the same width as you go up?
Yeah.
And is it sometimes that, maybe that the hole, is it always a circular hole, or is it maybe a little bit wider on one side than the other side, or is that maybe?
I have to think. It actually must probably be so that they aren't equally shaped. Okay. So that because
like it's not a perfect circle.
It's not a. Yeah, I would say that it's kind of how do you say, not symmetrical?
Yeah.
Asymmetrical. Yeah, and because I know that I can sense something in a corner and something on a like straight side that I can. So it's. I wouldn't say that it's symmetrical.
Yeah, I mean, I ask that because sometimes when I bring my awareness into my aura, certain parts of my aura feel clearer than other parts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the front of my aura feels clearer than, say, the back.
Mm.
And that's probably because my awareness most of the time is kind of
in the front.
That way.
Yeah. But you find it easier to perceive also towards the front and more difficult towards the back? Yeah, me too. Yeah. Good questions. I still have 25 minutes. I should start the monologue. Yeah. Well, I'm finished, so. Okay. Yeah, good.